Hello, welcome to this tutorial on the Surface editor. Today we'll focus on the new step sequencer. It has been around for a while, but honestly it was practically unusable. And since version 0.8.2, it has been completely rewritten, all bug fixed, and lots of new features. So I'm really excited to show you the new step sequencer. So in this tutorial we're first going to have an overview of the various features, and then we'll build a complete example like the one you have here from scratch, and finally we'll see some demo examples. In this tutorial we'll cover many topics that are very important for the Surface editor. You will learn how to use controller messenger, which is an important mechanism in the Surface editor to send messages to controllers and plugins. You will learn also about variables, about the switch, which is used for instance to have a controller having several actions, and you can switch between one action and the other. And finally you see also some plugins that allows to have inputs from the outside world, like the OSC and MIDI plugins. Alright, so let's start with the example that is prepared for this tutorial. You find it in the examples folder. It's that one step sequencer, and in order to play with it you have to switch to the play mode. So that's Control E on Command E on Mac, right? So you first have, of course, the basic start and stop features, and you see on the right I've put a few MIDI buttons that receive MIDI notes, so it's convenient to see what's happening. We have here the restarts. Let's start again from the beginning. Start, stop, restart. And something new which is very useful, it's the next. So with this we can move step by step. So step one, yeah. We have also the trigger here, so you can re-trigger anytime. It will just go through the step sequencer one time by default, but you can actually set an argument, so you can, for instance, set that when you trigger it will go 2 times or 3 times in loop. Have then forward and rewind that allows to position the head. Voilà. The clear to clear the pattern. I'm not going to do it now. And here we can, with this slider, set very conveniently the head. Yeah. And something new which is absolutely awesome is now with this I switch to the other function for this slider. Here we control the head, the position of the head. So as you can see, I can go through and read the step sequencer. This, yeah, let's add some more notes. Right. Yeah. Right. And you may wonder what is this vertical slider. And this vertical slider is also something completely new. It's the shift function, which allows to shift the entire pattern up and down. So this can be very useful, for instance, for controlling lights. We'll see in a different tutorial later on how we use this feature to control some LEDs. And lastly, oh yeah, we have this row of buttons on the bottom. This is another command called range, and the range allows to read a specific step, and it has also several arguments. The range, so the starting, we set the starting point, the end point, and the number of loops. Here in this example, it's just set for reading one step and one time, but you could set it to read 3 steps, for instance, 2 times, or whatever. So that was more or less all the features we can play with the Surface Editor. And now we're gonna start a new project. So we'll see how we build this from scratch. So I set new project. I don't want to save changes. Right. So as usual, you first set the number of columns and rows. It keeps in memory the settings from previous times, so we just keep the same. Right, and we have the new project, and if you were to display the grid, now you can see, yeah, the grid, but don't really need to see it, so let's hide. Okay, so the step sequencer is located in the plugins section on the right. And by the way, if your window is too small, you won't see it, and it will disappear in the below. So make sure you expand the window enough to see all the plugins. Okay, so let's put a new step sequencer. The first thing to do is to set the properties. So can set the BPM. So let's put 120. Number of track 16, number of beats, and beat subdivision. So we can keep like this, but yeah, if you were to put 2, you would have half of the subdivisions, but let's keep to 4. And you also have an option of sustain mode or not, which we'll see later on what is the difference, how it influences the playback. So in order for the step sequencer to play, you need to set some buttons and send some commands to the Surface Editor. So let's put a first button here. Right. And action you need to do that is the first one in the list, controller messenger. Right. So first you set the trigger, We trigger the action when the button is pressed. The controller name, you see in the list of all the controllers that are available. So we choose the step sequencer. And the message name. So in order to start the step sequencer, the command is simply start. So at this stage, if we go in play mode, yeah, as you see, it's working, but there's nothing to stop. So we're just going to duplicate this button and change to stop. By the way, I'm also going to change the edit play mode settings so it's not going in full screen. Right, so now it's a bit faster to switch between the edit mode and play mode. Alright. Now if you want to see the label on the buttons, you go in the properties, select a button, and here you see the name of the button that's given by default. And if you click here, show name as label, you see the name appearing. So let's put it in the middle and change names to something more meaningful, like the command we're actually sending, start. And let's do the same here. Let's go stop. Show name as label. Alright. So for the next buttons, in order to save time, I've actually cut the video here and I've uploaded the example we were seeing previously. So with this, I have the possibility to copy some buttons to this page, which will save a bit of time. Alright, as you can see, there is a number that is added to each button because it's renaming the buttons automatically. So I have just to quickly fix that. So we get something cleaner. Right. Up. And let's resize these two first buttons to make them a little bit smaller. Oops. Right, now I can select all those buttons and move them together. Okay, so now if we look to the actions, so we can have the controller messenger, and message name is restart for that one. Here you have next. Reset, we'll see that later. It's for this goes together with the shift. Trigger, message name is trigger. Forward, rewind, and clear. So all those messages or those commands, sorry, did not have any further argument. So now we'll see a different commands that takes an argument, and the next command we'll implement is the step command. So the step command is to position the timeline on a specific step. So I could use a multiple button to control the step command, but in this example I'm going to take a slider. Right. The step command takes as argument the number of the row, of the column, starting from 1. And since the slider is outputting value between 0 and 1, I need to convert this value so that it becomes a value between 1 and 16, since I have 16 steps. So in order to do this, we are going to see now how we use variables in the surface editor. So here, so far we have added action, but you see the second item in the list is add variable. Right. So I'm going to create a variable. Let's call it step, and the expression will be the slider value multiplied by 16. So if you click the interrogation mark, you see here what are the variables that are available. So the variable to get the value from the slider is slider dot value. So I'm going to type that variable dot slider dot value. So when it goes to black, it means it was a correct entry, and I'm now going to multiply it by 16. And again, I'm going to use the controller messenger. So now you see that I have 2 pages, so I see the list of the mapping components I have on page 1 and the list I have on page 2. Actually, both have the same name, so it doesn't matter if I choose from page 1 or page 2. Message name as a step. And now new, I'm going to add an argument, and this is going to be a variable. And by default it's proposing the slider value, but you see now that the variable I have just created is appearing here. Okay, so now let's see if it works. Alright, so you see now that it follows. Just the annoying thing, as you can notice, the slider doesn't go to the very end. So because of this, we have this offset between the slider position and the timeline, which is a bit annoying. So probably we're going to change the slider in a future release so that it goes to the end. Okay. But if you remember the previous example, we had 2 functions for this slider. Either it would just position the head like we do now, or it could be used to read set manually the position of the head in reading mode. And for this, I've set another button, which was here, step index. So I'm just going to copy it also to save some time. Oh, what's happening? I think I made something wrong. Sorry. Undo. Oh, because I'm play mode, sorry. Yeah, so I did not select the right component. Right. Let's change the name. Okay. And here, since I copied, I already have the action set. So you see controller messenger. I have two controller messenger, and this time it's sending the message to the slider, not anymore to the step sequencer, but to the slider. And the message name is switch, so it's a special message to switch between actions, and you will see that. And it's got argument which is the number of the switch, so this one is set to 0 and this one is set to 1. And you see also we have a different trigger. This action is triggered when the button is released, and this action is triggered when the button is pressed. And now if I go to the slider, well, first thing I need to change the name again, right? So because every time you add a new component, it will automatically add a number behind the name, but we want to keep the same name as before, so I just rename it to slider. So this is one thing very useful, actually, practical with a surface editor, is that if you have several controllers that have the same name and you send a message to one of the controller name, all of them will receive the message. So this way you can send a message to several controllers at once, as long as they have the same name. Okay, so if we go back to the action, I added the step action previously, but now I need to add a new thing that you see here, add switch activator. So I'm going to do that, and now you see switch 0, and I'm going to add a second one, and you see switch 1. So with this, I can set different actions under each of the switch, and with the other button, select when one or the other is chosen. So now I have to remember what is what. So when the button is pressed, we send the argument 1, and when the button is released, we set the argument 0. Okay. So it means that the previous action now needs to be under switch 0. So I'm going to cut, select switch 0, and paste. And you see now that this action is under switch 0. And for the switch 1, I'm going to add another action, step sequencer. And now this command is called index. Right, and it requires an argument. And here we also add variable, and this time we use the slider value. So let's see how it goes. Only I still have the step here, and now when I press the button, oh, was it pressed? Oh, okay, I have to just reset. Yeah, so that's released, and now this is pressed, and voila. And you see now that the index command is in action, and this way I can control the timeline manually. Next, since we are getting familiar with sliders, let's put the shift action. So I'm selecting another slider to put it. Oh, sorry, no. I was actually no. Yeah, do you want to delete? Yes. Actually, for this one, I'm going to use the OSC slider. This one, which allows to receive OSC, and you will see why I'm choosing that one instead of the regular one. The reason why I'm using the OSC is because I'm using this button here, the reset button, in order to control the position of this slider. And to do this, I create an OSC loop. So you see the action here is an OSC action, and this is the address. I'm not going to go fully in detail because there is another example in the folder that gives more detail how to use the OSC commands. But here I set the OSC address of this slider, and I send a value which is 0.5. So this means it's going to position the slider at halfway of its course. Now I just have to make sure that the address of this one is slider OSC. Yeah, so that's looking correct. And now if I press reset, yeah, you see that it's receiving the OSC value 0.5, and it's automatically going back to the center. Why? Because with the shift command, so let's put something in the pattern. Yeah, of course it's not. I'm not sending yet the command, but the principle is you have triple time the number of track, and by default you are visualizing the center part. And so here I have 16 tracks, so you have 16 tracks above and 16 tracks below, but you don't see them. So if you don't set any shift command, you see the middle part, and it's exactly the same as having this right in the middle. So we need now to add the action for this slider. So again, a good old friend controller messenger, control name step sequencer, message name is a shift, and again we had to add an argument, again a variable, and slider value, which is selected by default, is what we want. So normally now if I go back in play mode, yeah, the pattern is shifting up and down, and so if I press the reset joint, it comes back to the original position. Okay, so the last command that we have to go through is the range command, and for this one I will use the multiple button. Okay, and going into the properties, I can set the number of rows and the number of columns. So in this case I only need one row, but I need 16 columns, right? And I also need to add an action. Step sequencer, message name, range. And now we need, this one is taking 3 arguments. First argument, sorry, is to set the, let's make it a little bit wider. Sorry. Right. We have different options here: button column number, button row, cell number. But we only have one row, so the button column number will do. And so we use the button column number to set the starting step. We add a variable. No, actually, sorry. We'll add an argument, which is now a constant. So add literal. And this is the number of steps it will go through. So let's put 3 steps as an example. And last argument, again constant, is the number of loop. So let's put 2 for seeing what's happening. And now you see it's reading 3 steps 2 times. Tack. 1, 2. Okay. So we have now set and configured all the commands in order to control the step sequencer. But we're still not sending anything. So now we're also going to set an action for the step sequencer itself. And of course, the most obvious choice is to select MIDI note. But you could actually send any of those other actions, and even MIDI CC, for instance. You could choose to send the MIDI CC value corresponding to the track number, for instance. But let's go the standard way and put MIDI note. And now something very important that you must not forget to do when you use a step sequencer. Here you see that by default, when you select a MIDI note action, the note number is 60 as constant, and this is expressed by the white square that you have here. But this needs to be a variable because we have 16 tracks. So if you click here, you see you have more options. That's the first one that's selected by default, but you have 2 other ones: variable and variable range and variable shift. So variable range is used when you have a range of value, and it will scale between those 2 values. But in our case, we need the third one, variable shift. And what it does is it will add the key number. So key number is like the track number. Since the step sequencer is built on the keyboard, where you also have the variable key number, that's why we find it here. So key number is same as the track number. So it will start with a value of 0 for the first row, and 1, 2, 3, and so on. So it will add the key number to this base note. So what you specify here will be the base note. So it means the first line will be note 60, and further lines will be 61, 62, and so on. Alright, so not forget that. And now here I have MIDI monitor to see what's happening. So let's make it smaller. So we see both at the same time. Start and start. Right, and now you see that the notes trigger. Okay, now I'm going to show you what's happening if you have the sustain mode set or not. So let's clear this pattern, and I'm just going to play three notes, three consecutive notes. So going to clear that. Start, start, stop. So now if you look here, you see that it was triggering 3 times a note on, and only at the end it's triggering the note off. Same if I move the timeline manually, it will retrigger a note on every time it's passing over a selected note, and then note off. And now we will see what's happening. Oh, actually, before this also influencing. Oops. That's because, yeah. Let's do it like this. This is also influencing the way the step-by-step advance is working. So if I go next, you see not on, not off, not on, not off, not on, not off. But now if I switch this to sustain mode, you will see that the behavior for consecutive notes is different. So if I restart, it's clear to see exactly what's happening. So now next is generating a note on, but it's still keeping this note. Still keeping the note on. Only after I go to the next step, which don't have any note selected, it will generate the note off. Same thing with the index. It's keeping the note on, sustained as long as I am above the consecutive notes, and when I leave, it's triggering the note off. But of course, if there was going to be an interruption, then it would generate the note off. Off, not on, not off. Yeah, so the sustain mode has influence only for consecutive note. And the last thing to be able to build the example is to add the notes here. So this was used to as a visual cue. So let's do that to finish. And for doing this, okay, now here. Right, and to do this, I need the MIDI note button. So here it is. So I recreated the keyboard that way. So if we want to go to something more realistic, I can set to white, and I was selecting yellow for the note pressed. And you see here for this MIDI button that it has MIDI in. And first you select the bus, channel, note number, so we have to put it to 60 so that it corresponds to the notes that are sent. Okay. So it's creating a MIDI loop actually, because with this it's sending the MIDI notes through the bus and getting it back here. So let's check that it's working. It's expected. Yeah, you see the notes gets lighted, off and on, right? And since I still have the sustain mode selected, we can immediately see also what's happening as note stays on. And this is partly useful for the next button, because this means you can hold a chord. For instance, let's put a chord on and let's imagine you change another chord. Next, so it will hold the notes until you press the next. Okay, I have only one, so you didn't see that much. But so now I'm going to cheat again and copy. Oh, sorry, I have to, same as before, I have to go right, copy and paste. Right. More or less, anyway. So now I have all of them, and normally they should be already configured properly. So we have 61, 62, 63, and so on. Yes, only the, if compared to the original one, only the number has a change here, but we actually don't care about that. So now let's go back here. Yes, so what I wanted to show you is when we press the next, it's holding the notes until the next time we press the next command. So this allows to hold chords, for instance, as long as you want, and then boom, next step, only it's going to be released. Alright, so now we have a fully functioning step sequencer and also a mean to visualize the note that are sent by the step sequencer. And in the next sequence we are going to see a few examples of the step sequencer in action.